By the 21st century BC, Sumerian civilization was at its height, stretching from the Persian Gulf to the Mediterranean. However, over the next 3 centuries, a steady decline ensued, ultimately leading to its collapse. In the wake of invasions from new powers, Babylon would emerge as the new great power in the region. By the 2020s BC, most of the Fertile Crescent was still under the rule of Ur. However, a series of crises over the following 2 decades would bring the empire to collapse. Firstly, weaker flooding of the Euphrates and Tigris rivers caused huge grain shortages. The price of grain may have inflated as much as 60 times its normal value. The weakened state of the Sumerian economy, in turn, gave an opportunity to a group called the Amorites to invade the Mesopotamian plain. A 270-kilometer-long wall had been constructed on the border of the Amorite homeland, but it ultimately failed to keep them at bay. By 2010 BC, most cities in the empire had either been sacked by the Amorites or had gained independence, reducing Ur's control to a smaller area around its capital. Finally, in 2004 BC, Ur fell to its long-standing enemy, Elam, ending the dynasty permanently. Despite these setbacks, Sumerian culture was maintained to a large degree. The traditional, cultural and technological fabric of Sumer was appropriated by the Amorites, though much of the society changed as well. Land and cattle ceased to belong to the gods, but to the people themselves. Slavery and taxation were also abolished in many cities. These changes occurred predominantly in Syria, where several new kingdoms were established under Amorite rule. In particular, Mari and Ebla remained as centers of power. In Sumer itself, a number of cities gained independence. However, these were not the traditional powers that had ruled the region before the rise of Ur, but newer cities. 2 in particular rose to importance, the first of which was Isin. The Isin dynasty was founded by a former official of Ur, Ishbiera. He brought a degree of unity back to Sumer and restored control over Uruk and Lagash. The second was Larsa, which had formerly been under the control of Lagash. The conquest of Lagash by Isin gave Larsa the opportunity to grow into a new city-state. Under its first king, Naplanum, most major cities in southern Sumer were conquered by Larsa. This political duality between Isin and Larsa would exist for much of the remainder of Sumerian civilization. Meanwhile, in northern Mesopotamia, things were quite different. In a land once referred to as Subartu by the Sumerians, a new polity was gaining traction, Assyria. Like their Sumerian neighbors, Assyria was formerly under the dominion of Ur, but asserted independence during its collapse. It initially existed as a smaller city-state based around the city of Assur for around 2 centuries. This changed in 1809 BC, when an Amorite conqueror called Shamshi-Adad usurped the throne in Assur. Shamshi-Adad was an ambitious ruler and began his reign by consolidating Assyria as a single state. Within a few years, he had greatly expanded Assyria and moved the capital to the once abandoned town of Shubat Enlil. Around 1792 BC, he also conquered the kingdom of Mari to the south, putting all of northern Mesopotamia under Assyrian rule. Aside from military expansion, Adad made several other contributions. One such example is the Assyrian king list, an official list of kings of Assyria along with the length of their rule. As a means of legitimating his rule, he included himself on the list as a descendant of the mythical king Apyashal. Much work was also done to keep his empire together, chiefly by allowing existing local practices to continue in conquered cities, as well as overhauling the central bureaucracy and making treaties with neighboring kingdoms. Assyria under Shamshi-Adad thus became the first major Amorite-ruled state in Mesopotamia. This dominance was not to last long, however, as Sumer was once again undergoing a transformation. Around the time Mari fell to Assyria, a new Amorite king called Hammurabi came to power in the minor town of Babylon. Babylon had only gained independence from Isin about 40 years prior, and until now had not been of any real importance. But by the time of Hammurabi, a disunited Sumer was being pressured by an Elamite invasion from the east. Many cities had already been captured, and only Babylon and Larsa stood against them. Hammurabi was a competent military leader, and was able to push back the Elamite invasion. His victory came in spite of no material aid from Larsa, which Hammurabi saw as a betrayal of their alliance. He went on to punish Larsa, conquering the city in 1763 BC. As the last Sumerian-ruled kingdom, Larsa's collapse marked the end of Sumerian civilization and its replacement by Babylonia. Hammurabi's attention now turned to the north, which had become chaotic after the death of Shamshi-Adad. Adad's successor, Ishmi-Dagan I, was attacked on all sides by other kings, and his territory was gradually reduced back towards the Assyrian heartlands. This allowed the city of Mari to regain independence in 1775 BC. Mari quickly became the envy of other cities, boasting vast material wealth. Despite an alliance with Babylon, this was likely intolerable for Hammurabi, who subdued the city in 1761 BC. It was thoroughly destroyed, therefore, and lost significance. The empire was now the undisputed power in the region. Imitating earlier rulers in the same position, Hammurabi created a standardized legal code as a means of binding the empire together. The result was an extensive legal framework that dealt with many areas of civic life. This cemented Hammurabi's legacy after his death, and remained in use until the fall of the dynasty, some 2 centuries later, in 1595 BC, to a new civilization, the Hittites.